The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, you are listening to a bonus episode of Ratchet and Respectable. Oh my gosh. You know how when we talk about legal stuff, whether it's the Diddy trial or Tyler Perry or any of the 50 million trials or legal something or another's that we've talked about over the last couple years, I'll say, oh my God, I should have called Simone. I'll always say, I only took the LSAT, watched a few seasons of Law and Order. I've watched The Wire a million times, but I am not a lawyer. We should have called a lawyer. We need to call cousin Simone. I have mentioned her 50 million times on this podcast. So instead of being like, we need to call Simone, I actually called Simone. There are two big legal cases right now, in addition to everything else going on in the world. There are actually three. There's a Fat Joe one, but I'm not going into that. Diddy is currently on trial. Tyler Perry just got hit with a $260 million lawsuit. If you aren't up to date on that lawsuit, look at last week's episode, Wednesday. I read almost the entire 45 pages of that new Tyler Perry lawsuit. But I have once again asked an actual lawyer to come on the show and break down some of the legalese, some of the details that I will never catch because, again, not a lawyer. I love to talk and theorize, but I also like to, actually be informed. So that's what we're doing again today. If you're not familiar with Simone Redwine, and how could you not be? Even if you think you're not, you probably are. When that Cassie lawsuit dropped and Diddy settled for what we now know is $20 million, 24 hours later, Simone had uploaded a video. I think it was on her YouTube channel. It's called Girl, Is That Legal? She had uploaded this video on the Diddy settlement, and she said, everybody thinks like Diddy has paid this money out of pocket. What's more than likely is because Cassie sued him as an employee, it triggered the insurance that businesses have to cover employees. And that's probably how she got paid out. You saw that video. It was viewed 100 million times. You are more than likely one of the 100 million people that watched it. But let me read her bio real quick. This is so funny. On her actual page, she describes herself as Cardi B meets Judge Judy and Whitley Gilbert. I picked up on the Whitley. I picked up on the Judge Judy a little bit too. I didn't pick up on the Cardi B. She funny like Cardi. She got quick wit like Cardi. I'll give her that. Just wait till you hear this interview. 2 seconds. Let's read the bio first. Simone Redwine is a powerful trial attorney and law professor with beauty, brains, and a bold Southern attitude. She's a graduate of Cornell Law, and when she's not bankrupting multi-million-dollar corporations, you can find her providing legal and pop culture commentary on TMZ and ABC News, and also, I just mentioned this, on her YouTube channel, Girl, Is That Legal? She's also appeared on podcasts like Dear Future Wifey, and you also may have seen her on The Steve Harvey Show. And now you're listening to her on Ratchet and Respectable. Without further ado, I'm so excited I finally got this done. Simone Redwine. Simone Redwine. I am so excited to have you on my podcast. You have no idea.
Girl, I'm so happy to be here.
You are one of my favorite follows online. I have my notifications on so I can get all my updates from my favorite lawyerly bestie. But if I don't see you enough, I go to your page because I'm like, I must be missing something because you update all the time about whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm. I got a lot of stuff going on in my life. I got a lot of personal problems, as all adults do. So it's like managing the three, like the TikToker and then the Instagram and then YouTube, I'll just tell you, I put most of my stuff on YouTube because YouTube actually, pays me, and I'm really trying not to sell any coaching.
Girl.
But I would if I had to.
Look, I'd rather do that than do some of the things that have come up in this Diddy trial. I was like,
Right.
it's honest work for honest pay. If you're going to sell it, and I don't have no problem with you selling it, don't sell it for cheap.
Told the last guy I dated, and I said, let me tell you something. I'm the cutest tax deduction you ever gonna have. And he
Not
said,
tax
well, what do you mean? I am. I'm tax deductible. See, I'm still single in case anyone was wondering. As of right now, who knows what's going to happen? The Lord loves me.
Okay.
But yeah, I am because I'm a lawyer, so you can take me to an excursion. Like we can go to Maldives and talk about a little bit of law.
Tax deduction.
You know what I'm saying? Send it to your accountant. Send it to TriStar. Because see, TriStar is over here deducting drug payments. So the least they can do is deduct my love and kindness while we discuss legal matters.
Look, Diddy out here deducting everything on the Amex, on the company Amex. I was like, sir.
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
Come buy coochie. No, it was actually Bestie. But how are you going to buy that on your Amex?
He did it. He did it. He did it.
It occurred. That's what occurred. No, he didn't. I just want to clarify for the listeners. He didn't use the Bestie. Okay.
He bought it.
He bought it.
He bought it. It was bought
to allow Jane and others to enjoy.
That's what people are testifying to. Let's leave it at that.
On the stand.
Let me back all the way up. Right, you have been going to the trial every day, most days. You've been showing up.
Yeah, every day. Mm-hmm. Every day except for I still have my real clients, and I don't make my clients suffer for this foolishness. So I've had times where I had to do a deposition or whatever, and I step out. But yes, I've been going daily.
How would you describe the mood of the trial, the mood of the courtroom or the overflow, wherever you're into?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked. As an African-American, if there are any African-American listeners, and of course there are, I would describe it as such. When you go to a Black movie in the Black neighborhood, there's two courtrooms, right? There's the overflow. The overflow is like when you go to a Black movie in a Black neighborhood, we will, because they have screens that are portraying what happens upstairs.
Not y'all in there talking back to the screen.
Oh, we get to holler. We say, oh, wow. There was a time or two that I said, cut it out. We got to go. They were taking too long. There was the day they had the summary witness. They kept saying the same thing over and over and over. I said, listen, I have a hinge date that's waiting on me over at the happy hour.
Not making me late to happy hour. Not I got to get to happy hour.
It was the first date. I try to keep it low because that way he won't be expecting anything. Talk about. But
what they want.
But there's two courtrooms, okay? And the reason that is that way though is because for the main courtroom, they only allow 35 total people. It is 14 of the general public, and the rest are the press. They reserve the rest of the seats for Diddy's family, who don't use them all, because Diddy's family and or friends.
Okay.
And they don't fill them at all, but that's what goes on in the first courtroom. And then again, there's the overflow.
How many people are in there?
In the overflow?
Uh-huh.
It's a lot. Maybe 60, 40. It probably has capacity of around 40, 60. Yeah, there's never been a situation where someone wanted to go into that room and couldn't. I think instead what would happen is, for example, when people are waiting for the verdict, they will open an additional room, which is what they did for Kanye.
How are you getting into the court? Are you standing in line every day? Do you have a person who stands in line for you?
So I'm a lawyer, so there's a lawyer entrance.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was trying to figure out that press line situation, because I was trying to figure out if I should go to New York and...
You could be my paralegal.
I could be your paralegal.
We can go right on in there, girl. Okay. You'll be fine.
We'll figure that out. I'm moving to up top soon. I'm moving to Jersey.
I started my legal career in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Cornell Law, and then I practiced in New York and New Jersey for my first 3 years. And then I moved back home to Texas and opened my own law practice.
Oh, wonderful. Lovely. Mm-hmm. I had no idea where you lived. When I ran into you in D.C., I was like, is she here? And then I see you in New York. You're everywhere.
I am. I'm like a hobo, a legal hobo.
You're like on an odyssey. You're traveling. You're seeing worlds. I love it. So y'all are in this overflow room, and sometimes there's shouting, sometimes there's talking back. What are some of the things in this case that you have been like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is real. Is this really happening? This is crazy.
Girl, yeah, it's very bad. And to describe it, so on the left side of the room are the stinky people. Okay.
Wow.
There's some people that don't really bathe and stuff, and that's their business.
They literally smell?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I think they're unhoused.
Okay.
some are line sitters. So what they'll do is they'll get paid to line sit for somebody. And then once that person gets in, then they are able to go into the overflow, which makes sense. Ooh. It's like if somebody took some onions and then sat them on top of a heater. Yeah, it's like onions in your underarms.
Mhm.
Yeah, I try not to sit on the left side because it makes me angry. One of the times when the people really erupted was when Jane recounted her whooping Diddy.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the opening statements, we were led to believe that we were going to hear abuse that was similar to what Cassie experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh man, he going to be whooping up between that wash and dry. He going to be dragging her down the street.
Mm-mm.
When we finally got to it, which was her third day of direct, which I said, something right here. Because if somebody is really whooping you in between the washer and dryer, if someone is really doing that, I was like, why didn't the prosecution lead with that? You lead with, just like with Cassie's situation, they started day one, they played that video. They said, this is the monster that has you guys here today on jury duty. But with Jane, we hear the story, and it's literally day one, I'm like, oh, this sounds ridiculous. Day two, I'm like, it's still stupid. Day three, I'm like, wait a minute. When it opens that she hit him first in the head, and what happened was the prosecution elicited it. Whenever there's some real crazy fact, you don't want it to be revealed for the first time on cross.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecution always tries to reveal it to kind of soften the blow. In compared to when the girl that was dangled off the balcony, she was so sure of the day. And for the first time on cross, they were like, it didn't happen on the day.
Yeah.
That's an example of one where the prosecution should have got ahead. But so here where Jane talked about whooping him in the head and that initiating the fight, everybody was like, wait a minute. Hold on, guys. Because everybody was expecting that when she got to the force component of her evidence, that it was going to be damning, emotional. People would feel emotionally the way that they felt with Cassie. And no, ma'am, no, sir. That
he still did beat like the shit out of her.
he did.
It wasn't a proportional response, I would say.
No. I mean, yes. If that was a Texas county, he would be in jail.
Mm-hmm.
He could go to jail for something like that if she had wanted to call the popos. Absolutely. But with that being the sole incident, I think people were evaluating it in proportion to Cassie. So our expectations was that whatever it was going to be, no matter what, it was going to be more than one time.
Yeah.
So that was discussed. And then we're sitting on the edge of our seats. We're like, okay, tell me about the next time. And it wasn't on next time.
What did you make of that situation? Because like with Cassie, it was like he was beating the brakes off her like every day. And he has a whole relationship with Jane for 3 years. And the only time that he's violent with her testimony, is when she hit him first.
As an attorney, my first thought was, who in the hell would admit to this? How did this happen? Because even if that is the truth, usually what'll happen is they'll give a version to the prosecution that 100% makes them a victim. And so I was like, how did this happen? This don't make sense. And in my career, if something doesn't make sense, it's either because it's a lie or I don't have all the facts. Here, I didn't have all the facts. The facts were that the reason she sat up there and admitted it was because she had been working with the defense for the last year. And it wasn't until recently, I think they said it was maybe January was the last time she was willing to meet with the defense. But prior to that, she had told the defense exactly what happened and had already told them that she started it. Therefore, the defense knew that was the case. And so she had to tell the actual truth.
The whole version. Yeah.
The whole version. And I just thought that I said, I think the prosecution has made a mistake by calling this as trafficking by force. They could just left that out. Why don't you just call it coercion and fraud? Because the problem is going to be, we're not asking lawyers to make the decision. We're asking normal human beings. Oh yeah, because I think lawyers generally we're kind of kooky. We're a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're asking regular people, what happens is if you have 2 charges Jane and Cassie for the same thing, people who are already on the cusp of like, I don't know how I feel, they're going to compare the facts of the two. And if they don't look alike, they're even less likely to find guilty.
Let me ask you a couple questions about Jane.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, which I could not wrap my head, I mean, there's a lot of things I couldn't wrap my head around about Jane. Diddy is paying for her defense and is still paying for her condo or her house in LA. Like, is this not a clear conflict of interest?
So what happens under the law, you're making perfect sense. You're very smart. You is smart. You is kind. And how it works is this. While there could be a conflict, it is a conflict that is permitted to be waivable because they don't have the same lawyer. If they had the same lawyer, they wouldn't even be able to waive that. But because it's two different, both Diddy and her could sign this consent document that says, we understand it could be a conflict, blah, blah, blah. We're waiving the conflict. And the lawyer is attesting that that lawyer who's being paid by Diddy is solely going to work in her best interest.
I feel like that's what happened with Shine, and he spent his whole 20s in jail.
Sure did. And if she's not smart enough to know that anymore, that's why I said, Jane, go sit down somewhere. Jane.
I want to preface this in no way whatsoever am I attempting to blame a victim for anything, right? And I also was not sitting in the courtroom. Unlike you, I'm reading transcripts. Jane didn't come across to me as very bright.
I said, I want to see her IEP. If you don't know what IEP is, it is the intellectual educational plan. It's what they give to people who are either real, real slow or real, real smart. I got one, my brother. It's something up in there. It's something in there. I need to see it.
There was just a lot missing for me because at one point in the trial, she says, I don't want to do these freak offs. They are damaging to me. They hurt me, blah, blah, blah. And Diddy says to her, this is like in maybe 2024. And he says, oh, okay, I didn't know all this time that this was damaging to you. And she was like, I believed him at first, but then like I realized I scrolled through my text and realized I've been saying this all along. Like you forgot that you told him 50 million times, which is actually texted and documented. You really did say it. Like, what?
Yeah, I think it seems as though Jane very much had a survival focus. One of the things that I had wished that the prosecution had developed more was how she may have came about that survival focus. For example, if she was raised by immigrants from another country, I'm not outing Jane. I don't know her background, so I'm just saying, came from another country where they struggled, or even from America struggled, and what you were taught by your mom. Because I have a ho-hum girl, baby, and her mom was like, look, get us out these Lansing, Michigan projects, okay? And she did it with her vagina. Okay, she did it. And her mom was so proud of her. I mean, she's a nut bucket in more than ways than one. But when I learned her life story, she was difficult sometimes to deal with. But when I learned her life story, I could give her empathy and compassion. And I realized why she made her choices. Here, I actually would have liked to hear more of how did Jane become Jane?
Yes.
Because I have a feeling she has a scarcity story that would give us the ability to give her more empathy. Because right now, what we're seeing is, well, I saw her and she's drop dead gorgeous. And I saw a beautiful girl who was underutilizing her genetic part.
Agreed. There's a person that the internet believes Jane to be, and she's drop dead gorgeous if this is the person we believe her to be. And I was like, honey, you've got all the cards stacked in your favor. Like, make them work for you. But you got to have a certain, mindset.
But here's what I do think her mindset is. Her goal is to be a wife. So I do firmly believe that whereas I would have negotiated a better price point if you want me to take 4 eggplants on a Saturday, or Tuesday at school night, don't matter. I need a different price point. I believe her plan was to be the last woman standing.
She was.
And that if she was the last woman standing, at some point he would marry her, whether that's when he was 60 or whatever.
That man.
And so when I have girlfriends who feel that way, and when we talked about it, it comes from the scarcity mindset that we talked about, like that I believe Dane probably grew up with, it comes from this idea that if you tolerate enough trauma, eventually the man will give up.
Yeah, I mean, he may give in and he may marry you, but then now you're just married to the trauma instead of dating it.
Yes.
I mean, that's
exactly.
But I'm also saying that as, a grown-ass woman who's, married, divorced, lived, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and doesn't have my own set of trauma, but clearly not the same set of trauma that Jane has.
Right.
The Disney Plus Hulu Max bundle. It's the ultimate bundle for an unbelievable price. Plans starting at $16.99 a month. Get it and watch Marvel Television's Ironheart on Disney Plus.
I want to build something iconic.
A new season of The Bear on Hulu.
We can make people happy.
And The Epic, a Minecraft movie on Max.
Anything you can imagine is possible.
The Disney Plus Hulu Max bundle. Plans starting at $16.99 a month. All these and more streaming soon. Terms apply. Visit DisneyPlusHuluMaxBundle.com for details.
I've been trying to understand Jane. I said on a previous podcast episode, and I was like, I need her to write a book. And matter of fact, I will help her write the book. I will also, you can help her negotiate the contract.
Oh no, she's not gonna like me, but I'll send her to you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We need a lawyer to negotiate.
Jane, don't just. I'm not that person. I'm not mad at Jane. I'm mad at the prosecution for thinking Jane was a good idea.
Overall, how do you think the prosecution's case has gone? Because they're talking about they rest on Monday. Do you think that they have laid out the case and it's possible to get a conviction?
I do think it's possible to get a conviction.
Anything's possible.
Anything is possible for those who love the Lord. I think they will get a conviction on the prostitution charge. The prostitution charge is very simple. So that one, at a minimum, I believe he's going to get, unless he's able to have a juror who does what's called nullification, which means they see the law, they read it, and they're like, nope, I'm just not going to follow it. If that is the case, there's literally nothing that can be done. You cannot appeal and say, no, we want another jury. That's it. That actually used to happen back when we were slaves, of course, and Jim Crow and those kind of times, right? Mm-hmm. All the time. It happens a lot less frequently now. Maybe, 1% of the time. The trafficking charge, I don't think they're going to convict on that. I think it's going to be not guilty for Jane and possibly a mistrial for Cassie. But I will hold my right hand to the fire and tell you there ain't no way that they will find him not guilty of trafficking Cassie and guilty of trafficking Jane. Ain't no way. I do see guilty for the prostitution and for Rico.
For Rico, you think so for Rico?
Oh, Rico's there. Rico, Mario, Enrique, they all there.
So I'm going to go ahead and guess, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. It's because of like the arson, the bribery, the possession of drugs, distribution, kidnapping. Like, I feel like all of that's been pretty well proven. Tell me. You were the expert.
So what it is they only need 2.
Okay.
They need to prove 2 of the 8. I believe the strongest 2 of the 8, and it's 2 of the 8 that occurred within 10 years of each other. The 2 strongest of the 8 are going to be the hookers, the male hookers. Mm-hmm. Can't get out of that. And that bribery.
Yeah.
And that bribery. And the tampering with witnesses.
Yeah.
Because there's a bribery and a tampering with witnesses. And because the tampering was with the same people that he bribed, right? To get the video to go away. Mm-hmm. And how he paid them $100,000. Because when I was in that courtroom and Oh Boy Take That Stand, etc., week 1 was the current police officer took the stand and said he was offered money by Diddy, but Diddy had on, what was he wearing? He was wearing a robe and no clothes, and it was just like a bag of money.
Yep.
And they tried to allude that Diddy was simply trying to pay for the broken damage and handed him cash. That guy declined the money. But then subsequently, KK, his chief of staff, started harassing the other gentleman Eddie Garcia, thank you, who had access to the video footage, showed up at his work called him on his home phone, blah, blah, blah. And that was when it was still bribery before, but I think that's when for the jury, the bribery elements were there. Now, someone on a street corner told me I didn't know what I was talking about outside the courtroom because I Googled it. Those were his words. You can find them on YouTube. His words were, I Googled it. And for bribery, you have to have an open charge. No, stupid. You don't, because sometimes the charge gets opened like after you bribe the person. But more specifically, under the law, which is California Penal Code 137, it specifically states that bribery is the providing of the money or offering to a witness or potential witness. I don't see how they get out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy is either a witness or potential witness, and they both offered it and then provided it. So we got the bribery. They tampered with the witness. These same guys, we got the hookers. That's 3. Anything else is kind of like icing on the cake that could get him an even more severe sentence.
Okay.
Although I do understand some people have questions about, well, what about the purpose? And there wasn't profit, and their goal wasn't profit, all that stuff.
Do you need profit for RICO?
Hell no. No, you don't need profit. What you need is a common goal. So I think the confusion is that generally the common goal is profit. In the indictment, it lists the common goals. Check this out. This common goals, one of them is complete loyalty to Diddy. And people were like, wait a minute, isn't that every employer? I would agree it could be, but this one is like complete loyalty to the point where you commit crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Another is to provide Diddy with complete gratification, sexual or otherwise. And so it was really odd, but it is a common goal. And if they're able to show that that part of the goal was to gratify Diddy and provide him with complete loyalty, the problem is it's so easy to prove, and I feel like they have.
Well, you know what? Something you just saying about the complete loyalty, it reminds me that almost every person who testified who worked for Bad Boy or had dated him at some point, even the people he abused, he threw a computer at one girl's head.
Yes.
But yes. At the end of the testimony, they asked them, how do you feel about Diddy? And, people are like, well, I invited him to my wedding and I, sent love and,
right.
I don't have any problems with him. I still respect him very much. And, I'm like, what's happening here? This man treated y'all like shit, overworked you, underpaid you, had you involved in felonies, which you're fully aware of at this point. And you're still kissing the ring and genuflecting for him. What?
That's why I'm so struggling with the prosecution. Because part of me, I want to manhandle them. Girl, what is you doing? And because a component as well is I feel like this is what happens when you don't have DEI. SDNY is supposed to be the most prestigious federal division in the country. Mm-hmm. And that's because they are older than America itself. They were the courts during the Revolutionary War, blah, blah, blah. I remember being at Cornell Law doing job recruiting. And there was this other girl. She was also from Dallas. She was smart as a whip. And we were talking about what firms we went. I was like, hey, girl, do you want Vincent Elkins or some of the other firms? And she was like, oh, no, I want to be a U.S. attorney. I was like, oh, my God, so you want to be poor? Well,
Simone.
Because that was my concern. Well, I know.
I don't believe in broke either. I understand.
Not intentionally.
It happens. I mean, we'll figure it out, but we don't set out for that.
It's accidental. Why would you do that? We were graduating at a time where the starting salary was $160,000 with your panties on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? That was in 2008. $160,000 with your panties on. Demetria, what would you done? The economy was crashing.
Y'all were the only people employed.
Lehman Brothers gone. People was jumping out of windows. It was bad. So I say that to say I learned later how prestigious that area was. And as a result, it's very Caucasian. Nobody looks but I feel that if they had people of different demographics, Black people or whatever, I would have been like, don't y'all sit up here and come in here talking about Jane was trafficked by fraud and force. Demetria, do you understand what they mean by the fraud? I need to make sure your listeners understand the foolishness of the fraud
Explain
argument.
it to me, Bestie.
Girl, they said the fraud was he promised her quality time. That if she did the freak-offs, they'd have more quality time. And that was fraudulent. I said, well, that's half the married men in America. They said, oh, do it to me tonight. Do it to me. Give me something tonight, just a little bit. I give you quality time when Saturday comes. I'm just stressed out on the job, at the factory. Are you kidding me?
They had DEI. Let's just go with that. They had basically more Black people in there. What do you think that their approach would have been? How do you think it would have been different?
We would have said, hey, boo-boo, there's no way a Bronx juror, Harlem juror, or even a Caucasian, Lower East Side juror is going to be willing to find him guilty for a lack of quality time. Do you know that New Yorkers work to pay their rent? They donate plasma to pay their rent. To say someone has, one, been trafficked for quality time, or the other argument was you were trafficked because he would threaten to break up with you and only pay 3 of your $10,000 a month rent. These people are on government assistance and or a voucher program and or an apartment with salary restrictions. Their rent ain't $10K. They're not going to find that to be coercive. They're going to find it to be gracious and generous.
Yeah, figure out your rent like everybody else in America.
But you got people like, arguably, I could be wrong, Miss Comey. There's no place Miss Comey would want to live in New York that she couldn't. Because if she couldn't afford it, her daddy could make a call. Her daddy could get her on the list. Let's just call it what it is. And so when you've got those people, they're so intellectual and cerebral, because I do think these are highly intellectual people. What I found at Cornell was people would just look at the law and they wouldn't look at the people who are required to apply the law. I'm the people who would be required to apply the law.
One of the things that stood out to me, I think it's earlier this week in the trial, it just blew my mind, was the amount of texting, basically creating transcripts of criminal behavior. And I was like, why are y'all texting about paying a drug dealer? Literally, he texted, it was 12 pills of Molly and don't text me about this. I go, what?
Don't text me. That was my favorite part. He said, don't text me.
I was like, oh.
You slow learners.
It's one of the things that has stood out to me so much about this trial is how sloppy everything was, and how it took so long for him to be accused or charged of something like this. Because he's so sloppy about so many things. He's trying to hide who he is at one of the freak-offs, but then on the TV screen,
dressed up as
Mr.
Mina the Muslim.
I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Or he's personally texting with the escorts and making travel arrangements and then sending it to a Bad Boy or Combs Enterprises travel agent and then having it taken out of his. I'm like, you ain't got no Bank of America account where you just got your own debit card for this shit. So it's not tied up.
I feel like Gina would have been good for that. That's what you should have used. Y'all underutilized Gina.
Gina didn't testify.
So Gina is out over in some third world country.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
With, I don't know, $2 to $5 million, living her best rest of her life, right? And then her mama and her granny or whoever, I don't know if she's Vietnamese. I don't know what type of ease she is, ma'am. But whatever she is, she's over there with her people and they're proud of her.
Remember R. Kelly did that too? He allegedly sent one of his, I guess the first time he was on trial, he sent somebody overseas. And I was like, oh, that's probably where Gina is, because they can't find her lawyer. They can't find her. Everybody's gone.
Now, Demetria, I'm the first attorney to sue R. Kelly civilly.
No! What did you sue him for and when?
So I represented a client who he gave herpes. So I sued him in 2018 under the the gender-based act in New York State. And then from that is what you see now with Diddy. All credit goes to Lee Merritt, my co-counsel. Lee Merritt, it was his case. He brought me in. I was licensed in New York and Texas. The victim was based out of Texas and met him. And Lee was like, can you look into this? Let me know what you think. And I looked into it. I was like, hey, the gist was R. Kelly. She was 19 at the time. She was a teenager, but she was 19. He had given her herpes. He knew he had herpes. Ben knew it. And so I looked up the law, and there's Texas, who don't care about humans. And then there was New York, who had just created this law that says, wait, not only can you get stuff for normal, like battery and stuff like that, but they had Gender Motivated Crimes Act. I said, oh, got him, coach.
Got him.
And we got him, and we filed under that, blah, blah, blah. So that was the initiation of it. But what I knew is that New York would be the place where you can save women who are in these situations, where other people don't believe them, but the facts support and the truth supports it. So I say that to say, in these like weird little cases that have these like the R. Kelly and all of that, the similarity seems to be they got away with so many things for so long, and they felt really comfortable, right? Because that's what led us to talking about this, is how did you get so sloppy? And I think with Diddy, he got away with so much stuff beforehand that he felt like, oh, well, his staff's got this. And then even when they don't, he checks the staff, and then they would do things like how KK went and got rid of the tape after the fact from the hotel.
And documented the whole thing. I mean, they've got the phone records. Like, he at this time called. He called this time. The phone call lasted XYZ. And I was like, did none of y'all watch The Wire? Like, please meet in person and go outside and talk.
The only reason that stuff was collected was because after Cassie's case, they were able to get a warrant, a search warrant. And I told people that when I did the Cassie video, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's just there for the money. If she really wanted justice, she would have sued him otherwise. I was like, please stop talking. You sound stupid. And because you don't know the law, you're not stupid. You're just uninformed, which is that victims can't control who is or isn't prosecuted. Victims only get to present their side of the story, and it goes from there. But I knew, because I've been in this situation, there was some criminal stuff involved, and I knew that the police weren't going to deal with it. So I said, all right, I'm about to make you poor.
My thought about the civil suits was it's a lower burden of proof, and that's why people go that way.
Yeah. Oh,
because especially charges with like sexual assault, rape, things like that, it's really hard to get a conviction.
Yes, and that made me think of Jane. So one of the things that the prosecution tried to establish with Jane is, hey, you're not suing him today. You have no suit. You have no plans to sue. And I thought to myself, the defense had a missed opportunity, because the truth was, she gonna sue him if he's guilty. Why? Because if he is found guilty of trafficking her, California and New York have statutes that allow you to civilly get compensation for that. She wouldn't even need a trial. All she would need to do is submit the transcripts from this and a motion for summary judgment, and a court would pay Jane millions if and only if he's convicted. If you're a victim, ain't nothing wrong with that. Good for you.
I don't tell victims how to seek their justice. Like, if you want to go through the courts, and that's, if you want to pursue that, you want to do civil, you want to do both, you want to do street justice.
Right.
You can't advocate for that. But, if it happens, it happens. It is what it is.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
One more question about Diddy. So I read the other day that the defense was only going to put on for like 5 to 6 days. And then they changed it today. They were like, yeah, only we need really like 2 to 3 days. And I was like, wait, what? Like that's it? Is that normal? Is that crazy? Is that, because to me it sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy to me to go they went from 5 witnesses to 2 or 3. But I also want to remind people that because it is a prosecution's burden, in the majority of cases, defense puts on 0 people, not 1. Because you can't I think people are assuming he can just put on a bunch of character witnesses that are going to sit up there and be like, Diddy's my guy. We used to go to the white party. He was so no, it's not that. It has to be directly relevant. So it's my understanding, for example, he is going to put on his HR person, Vashta, or I don't know how to pronounce her name, something like that. And she has been discussed in the case, and they'll probably use her to clarify that certain decisions or payments or whatever were personal related and not business, to separate out the RICO. That makes perfect sense. But aside from that, they likely feel like the government has not proven their case, and therefore they have not met their burden. So let's not put anyone on the stand where they can risk losing that advantage. And they can't put KK on the stand. They can't put D-Rock, the security guard, on the stand.
Where is KK? Because I just assumed that she would, flip for the prosecution. They'd give her immunity and she'd tie everything together, right? And KK is just AWOL.
Absolutely. So I thought the same thing as well. And then I thought about it. And then there's the golden rule of practicing law, which is you never ask a witness a question you don't know the answer to. I believe KK has never sat down with the defense and told them her story. Why would she? Because she has been considered a co-conspirator. There's no lawyer that would advise her to go ahead, sit down and tell them everything you think. Even if you're doing it in what's called a proffer, which happens prior to immunity, the rules of a proffer are not that whatever you tell them can never, ever be used. No. The rule says we can only use it if we can get additional corroboration. So if you say, oh yeah, we used Guido as our dealer and so-and-so as our dealer, and then they go talk to Brendan Paul and say, hey, Brendan, has Guido ever dealt you substances? And he's like, yeah, all the time. Because I believe KK never sat down with them and told her the whole story. They've never wanted KK to be their witness. Secondly, as a co-conspirator, the government can't force her to testify, and she won't. Co-conspirator, think of it as a co-defendant. Same thing. Have you ever seen a trial or heard of a trial where the government subpoenaed a co-defendant who's sitting there at the defense table? No, because you can't.
Break this down for me, Bestie, because I'm not understanding. Okay. What do you mean she's a co-conspirator?
Oh, girl, I thought you knew. I'm sorry. Okay, so sitting there in the courtroom the other day, there was a text message exchange between KK, D-Rock, and Diddy. I believe it was related to drugs or a freak off, something clearly illegal. And in that discussion, the prosecution was trying to get it in. The defense said, no, KK is not taking the stand. D-Rock is not taking the stand. Can't get it in. Generally, that is a rule. If none of the witnesses that are part of the string are taking the stand, you cannot get it in because it's hearsay. However, if those people are co-conspirators, it can be admitted because co-conspirators have the right to plead the fifth and say, I ain't taking the stand.
You're calling her a co-conspirator. Does that mean she's being charged with
She has already been charged, girl. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
When did KK get charged?
Know the day. So Diddy is sealed defendant 1. KK is sealed defendant another number. I don't know if it's 2. I don't know if it's 3. But KK is sealed defendant one of the other people.
Is this in the grand jury indictment?
It is in a grand jury indictment. Exactly.
I've looked at that thing 50 million times.
It's not public. That's why it's called sealed defendant. It's not public.
Jesus.
It's still sealed. That's why they can't call her to the stand. So it'd be like if I was charged with, like, I don't know, slapping somebody, and you're charged with slapping somebody. You're on trial for slapping somebody, and I slapped him too, same day. They can't call me because we could be co-defendants. And I have a right to be like, no, I'm pleading the fifth. So the issue is it's just two different cases.
Will there be a whole separate case against KK?
Could be, could not be. We don't know. I think they're going to wait and see how it rolls out with Diddy. I think if Diddy walks on everything, then they not going to charge her. I think they used that, though, to put all the heat on her to try and get her to sit down and talk. Think of First 48, the TV show. If KK was whatever part of an alleged murder and she never walks in and says anything to the investigators, they don't know what she's going to say. They sure not going to call her to the stand to figure out what she's going to say for the first time. Here, there's enough evidence where she's clearly a co-conspirator. So she has been charged and it has been sealed. The reason you keep it sealed is because you may want her to be your witness. But it appears she's not cooperating. And that's why it's remaining sealed. They're going to see what happens with Diddy, and that will determine what happens with her.
See, Bestie, this is why I call you, because things like this. I'm like, why is she calling? Like, she's a co-conspirator. Like, no. I'm missing something.
Yeah. And the court specifically referenced her and D-Rock, security guard, and said in court, they are co-conspirators, Your Honor. This is why this document should be admissible. When that happened, I said, oh, shoot, that's why they're not testifying. And they're not going to testify for the prosecution, and they're not going to testify for the defense. And here's the thing. I got to give credit. I wasn't so sure about the 6-pack of white ladies, okay, on the prosecution. But I got to give them their credit in that what they've done by naming her as a co-conspirator and then having a sealed indictment related to her is effectively what they said is this. Oh, okay, you not finna help us? Well, chick, we gonna make sure you can't help him. She cannot get up there and testify for Diddy without exposing herself to literally being sued as a going to jail as a co-conspirator. And she has 3 civil cases against her as Diddy's right-hand woman. And any testimony that she would give for Diddy, if she comes to the stand for Diddy, all of that testimony could be used in the civil cases, and she would be liable for millions.
Got it.
They got her.
You're smart, Bestie. You're very smart, Bestie.
Thank you.
I have one more round of questions for you. Can we talk very briefly about this Tyler Perry lawsuit with 200 million American USD dollars and De Niro's lawsuit?
Yeah, girl, that was... I'm going to just start with the beginning. Okay. Boy, why would you sit up there and say you want 280? What? Okay.
I feel like the number was to get attention. I feel like you also could have said 50 million and it would have had our attention. But 260 million is like a fifth of his over $1 billion fortune.
It is. And when you got a poor person who's like, I think he said his salary is probably closer to under 200K or something like that. This is just such an arbitrary number. So I agree with you. I feel like a lot of times what's happening today is attorneys are using their pleadings as a press release. See, back in the day, it was 2 separate things. You have your pleading, you stick to the law, and you prosecute your case in court. Now, with social media and others, they also want to prosecute in the court of public opinion. So I think that was probably a little ridiculous to say 280. Because I bet in a deposition, if I was opposing counsel, I'd be like, all right, so you're suing for 280 million. How is that comprised? And he's going to be like,
do you think the lawsuit has any merit? Because I was looking at some of those text messages and I was like, this is employer to employee. I don't know how I can justify my boss asking me about,
Bestie,
certain things.
I have to tell you, I'm going to say.
Biscuits and blowjobs.
Yes.
It was literally in the lawsuit. I'm not making sure. It's literally in the lawsuit.
I spit my water out. I'm going to actually go out there and say I think this is the Diddy effect. By that, I'm referring to the fact that Cassie sued as an employee and received a settlement in 24 hours. What that is taught to lawyers who previously didn't know no better, because I did my little legal breakdown where I explained what happened is with Cassie's suit, because she sued as her being his employee, it triggered an insurance policy for employees that all employers have. And as a result, it was switched to a claims adjuster, and the claims adjuster, not Diddy and not Tyler Perry, gets to decide whether the claim is settled and for how much. Here, by the wording that was used in this petition, now it triggers Tyler Perry's employment law insurance. Whether he's an employee or independent contractor, doesn't matter. It now takes it out of Tyler's hands into the hands of the claims adjuster. And the claims adjuster gets to decide, is it going to get settled or for a dollar amount? Now, I can tell you this. It's limited to whatever employment law insurance policy Tyler Perry has. And that policy is not $200 million and $80 million for one occurrence. What happens goes by per occurrence. So, number one, I wouldn't be surprised if it's ultimately resolved under a sexual harassment claim. But 280, first of all, that was arbitrary. You're never going to earn that in your life, the life of your kid, the life of your dog, any of that. So you're just making shit up at this point. But what we're going to see is going forward in that fight is that Tyler actually isn't going to have to pay a dime to defend it. His insurance will kick in, so he just has to pay his deductible. And therefore, it's going to be the fight of Tyler's life. Here's what's on the line. Girl, I'm going to lean in and make sure you hear me. It's found that Tyler misbehaved and is found liable for this. Tyler's going to have difficulty getting any other insurance company to insure his productions. You cannot have a production
without insurance.
Therein lies the power.
That was like the court of public opinion. By and large, people are like, don't care. I don't know if it's Diddy fatigue or it's like, Tyler Perry has such goodwill in the community that people are just like, I don't want to hear this shit. Like, just pay this man, get this lawsuit away from me. Just go ahead and make your movies. I'm not trying to hear this ish right now.
Agreed.
Like, people are overwhelmed.
And I think too, because it's a man, people don't feel like, you a grown man. Like, cover your booty hole, keep it moving.
Essentially, no one cares. People read the lawsuit or listened to the lawsuit on my podcast, and it's like, oh, it's so salacious. But overall, people are not like, oh, throw him in the jail, under the jail, burn him at the stake. It's just like, come on, Tyler, why didn't you have no NDAs? This is sloppy.
I was thinking that first.
Pay some people to do the things that you like to do, like role play or whatever. You got too much money for this business to be out in the street. Cut this man a check and make this go away.
I know a lot of people that will give him some bussy right now.
Exactly.
Good bone structure, reasonable credit scores.
We'll sign an NDA. Want none of this publicity. Cut the check. Cut the check. It's less than 280. Cut the check.
Exactly. But it makes me think of remember with Alec Baldwin. Yeah, Alec Baldwin. In his situation, it was distinctly different, right? But his production had insurance, and the insurance ultimately is what defended him, etc. So I just use that as an example of how you can't have productions without forms of insurance. And so that's the part that's going to be important for Tyler. But I also say that to say, if there ends up being a quick dismissal or something else related to this suit, it could be that the claims adjuster evaluated the claim and was like, no, you didn't SA him. None of that happened, but we will give him an amount for sexual harassment.
I don't want to hear none of this. I got enough with Diddy. I saw something against Fat Joe yesterday. I haven't even read the lawsuit. I'm like, I don't have the wherewithal to deal with all this right now. Like, make this go away.
It took me like 2 days to get over the trifecta where Jane was Kobe and Diddy was Jordan and then somebody else was Shaq. Why'd you make him Shaq? I know Shaq was upset.
I know Jordan was sitting somewhere like, I mind my business. Right. I barely do interviews. How I get in it? How I get in it?
Getting it, girl.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Kanye West is showing up to court trying to get in it.
Trying to get.
Sorry.
He said, asked me about that freak off because that was me and my wife, and I was in there watching her do it to, I don't know, a little person. Who knows?
He wanted people to know. Meanwhile, people who don't want no parts of this getting got their names called out in the trial.
But I actually, if the truth was that at that freak off, Jane did it to, somebody in the room without Diddy, I actually feel that would be directly relevant. That would be helpful testimony. But given that he's not on the witness list, I believe it's probably not the case. Diddy would have been able to just pick up the phone and be like, hey, Kanye, did she do it to anybody over at your thing? Because that would be awesome to show she likes freak offs. It's her thing. It's not about Diddy. She does it for whoever.
I thought her being in the room with, because if I show up somewhere and there's some people literally having sex and I'm not like in Amsterdam or something, I'm leaving. I'm going home. It's too late in the evening hour for me. Y'all are taking too many drugs. I'm not with this. I'll catch y'all in the morning. Call me when y'all up for breakfast. Like, this is not my thing. It's a certain type of person that shows up and sees that and it was like, oh, keep the party going. Like, what y'all drinking? Like, wait, what? There are two people fucking in the corner.
Right. But see, she's used to this. That's her talent.
Look, if it's a talent and it's lucrative, honest work for honest pay.
And I could do it. I would too.
Not no swindle.
Yeah. And I can understand her saying, in the end, what was interesting with her testimony is that it seemed her issue wasn't the freak offs. Her issue was the disrespect.
Yeah. She wanted to be the number one spot.
Right. And I think if in closing, if they're able to establish like, yeah, her issue wasn't the freak off, it was the public disrespect, because she felt like if you're going to have any public girlfriend, it should be me, not whoever you're advertising, not Carisha, not the other girl was like Jade or what have you, not any of these girls, because she specifically, and this is testimony, if you have not been following it, I need you to know this piece about Jane. There was an incident where Jane has a birthday that's right around Carisha's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jane had done a freak off on her own birthday. He leaves, he goes to Carisha's birthday and flies out her homegirls, rents a villa. They have a chef, at all of the things. She then harasses him, tells him leave early, come back, or there will be no Valentine's Day freak off, which is supposed to be a few days later. So that says to me, there's an element of you that uses freak offs to control.
Yeah.
So which one is it the control or the coercion? That's why I think ultimately that jury's going to have a challenge coming to an agreement for all 12 people that it was in fact trafficking for Jane.
You repeatedly emphasize throughout this conversation, you got to convince a jury of 12 people that this is, that they have to be all aligned, and it's really not likely.
Let me tell you something. They got, how many people? It's kind of hard to know which ones are on the jury versus alternate. But it's at least four Black people. I'll say that. And when they look at Jane, they're going to look at her and she's going to represent women who have lied on their loved ones. I'll put it that way. Women who have lied on their loved ones in various contexts. And so I can see them saying, we got another liar here. I don't feel comfortable saying guilty for this Jane person who appears to be somewhat vindictive and otherwise. Oh, wait. Oh, Bestie, I don't think we mentioned this yet. Do you have an understanding of how much time Diddy is facing? So for the prostitution, there's a max of 10 years.
Okay.
Trafficking gives up to life. And Rico is somewhere in between. But I want to make sure everyone understands the jury is not allowed to know how much time Diddy would be facing if found guilty.
They don't know? Only the judge does the sentencing.
The judge does the sentencing, and the law says can't tell the jury. It's irrelevant. And when I used to work on the defense, I say, if that is very relevant, if they knew that for this stupid charge, someone could get life, they would be more careful with their decision. And then the judge said, and that's why we don't tell them.
That's kind of insane.
Isn't that insane? So I just want to make sure people understand. So when they're like, there's no way a jury's going to give him life for this, I was like, a jury wouldn't even know that they're giving him life.
They don't know.
They only receive the jury instructions, which once we receive them, I'd be happy to come back and break them down in like normal people words. So far, I've seen the defense version of what they want added, which I really like. Given that I've been on the defense side, it's things like be clear about what the statute of limitations is regarding the RICO offenses, because they're arguing that some of the stuff discussed has already happened outside and can't be considered. And then with RICO as well, many people don't realize 12 jurors have to find at least 2 of the 8 RICO offenses have occurred. But that's the one area the jury don't have to agree. Did you realize that?
No.
If one juror is like, oh yeah, I definitely see bribery with tampering with a witness, but ain't no S trafficking and my granddaddy got prostitution, I'm not about to find this man guilty of prostitution. They can do that. But if they find the bribery and the tampering, that too is sufficient. And someone else could be like, oh no, he did all of the 8. Cool. As long as 12 of the jurors, each one finds at least 2 things he did.
Oh, yeah, he did that.
Oh, that's what I'm
Okay.
saying. That's why I'm like, ooh, that one is probably going to be one of the easier ones to prove. We all saw the hookers.
And the drugs.
I do think, though, that people have a misunderstanding of distribution versus sales. Because usually when we hear distribution, we're thinking of like drug lords. Here, literally distribution is sharing or giving. And because he had people like pick up prescriptions in their names and 15 mollies, he's probably not using 15 mollies that day. He's sharing them. A lot of them are given to the hookers. Giving them to the hookers is sufficient. If you give them to the hookers, you give it to anybody other than you and your girlfriend. And that has been proven.
This is a mess. But allegedly, we're supposed to find out like a verdict before the 4th of July.
You're all good.
Well, I would love to have you back on the show when I don't know, the next big thing happens. It's because you are my bestie in my head. We've wanted you on the show forever. We call you Cousin Simone. We don't even call you bestie. We call you cousin. You're not new to anybody. We talk about you all the time. We talk about your videos. We talk about how we need to call you because we talk about legal stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, I just watch Law and Order.
And I'll just tell people, like, I do secret consultations, so don't feel like I'm going to be out here telling your business. And one of the things that makes me, like, the happiest is, like, now, like, people and celebrities that I've been watching since my childhood will be in situations and they'll call me and I'll be like, mm-mm. So this is what we need to do. Blah, blah, blah. And I'll like call my bestie from Cornell or my homeboy from Harvard. And we pull together these legal teams to like fight crime. It's like so cool. It's not always crime. Sometimes it's just like frivolous lawsuits. But yeah.
The heroes we need, the legal adventures.
I love it.
You heard the Whitley thing, right? When she was like, oh, I'm from Houston. I was like, and now it explains it. It explains it all. She's funny as hell. She was like $160,000 with your panties on because the distinction is important. All right. That's today's episode. We'll be back a couple more times this week. We haven't done a Diddy update, a day by day of what's going on in the trial. It's been a little light since Jane got off the stand. Plus, we missed a couple days with the holiday, Juneteenth, and then also a sick juror. So Wednesday and Thursday, there was no trial. So it seems like it's been a long time, but we've only actually missed, I think, 4 days of actual testimony. 5, if you include today. So we'll get a Diddy update. And the prosecution is supposed to rest as of today, Monday. The defense says they only need about 2 days to make their case. And then Thursday, we're expecting closing arguments. So we're pushing right along. I thought at the beginning of the trial when the judge said, he wanted everything wrapped by July 4th, I thought he meant like, actual testimony. I didn't know he meant, charges go to the jury and he wants a verdict. Like what? So the Diddy trial is coming to an end, which, to be honest with you, I ain't never done so much podcasting in the entire 6 years I've been doing it. I'm looking forward to the end of this. And so many of you have written in to be like, okay, so like, I get it. It's the Diddy trial of the century. But like, when do we get our usually scheduled programming back? I was like, wait, I thought y'all wanted more than one episode a week. Y'all been getting like 2 and 3. Not the point. You'll get regular episodes back when the Diddy trial is done. Assuming I don't take a little break. I've been working, y'all. I deserve a break. Plus, it's my birthday. We'll talk about that in another episode. Okay. We're done. Look forward to more episodes this week because we have a lot to cover. I'm not covering Fat Joe. I'm tapped out. I can't read another lawsuit, not even on here, but just in general. I can't read another lawsuit about women, girls being abused right now. Like, mentally, I'm at peak. Diddy has taken me out. Not everything, but things. And we'll be back later this week. Okay, bye.